things that we saw today was this dramatic sell-off going into this shortened week, and where it's landed is getting pretty interesting. We're taking a look at the S&P here. We're also going to dive into the NASDAQ. Both these indices are in uptrends. Despite the pullback that we've seen over the last handful of sessions, these are still two uptrending corners of the market on the daily. We continue to see a downtrend on the 1 hour. So, one thing we could think about is if we want to be bearish, this is the time frame to do it on, the 1 hour, maybe shorter. But if we're looking at possibly a reversion to the mean, if we're looking for support to buy, it's the daily that's really shaping up. All right, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Raghee Horner, and I am the lead trader over at Simpler Futures, as well as the Sector Secrets Mastery. We're going to talk about 3 symbols that are absolutely on the radar for us as we kick off this shortened week. Let's start it off with the NASDAQ, because remember, the NASDAQ does influence the other sectors in a more, the other indices in a more impactful way. Because tech XLK is so heavily weighted, of course, in the NAS, but the S&P and the Dow as well, usually what the NASDAQ does is going to in many ways echo through, for sure, the S&P and eventually the Dow, unless healthcare and financials can buck the trend of tech. All right, so now that we know some of the ground rules, what are we dealing with here? Dramatic sell-off, broke the 200 exponential propulsion. We can see that right in here. Doesn't mean that this is necessarily a downtrend. It does mean that if buyers are going to step up, it's going to have to be around this 12,000 to say 11,900 area. And that's really where the uptrend would run into volatility-based support. This is the DPMR. And if you don't know what this is, let me tell you what it is measuring. Every day of the week has a certain number of points that it tends to move. Monday is different than Tuesday, Tuesday different than Wednesday, etc. So if I were to look back 6 months of Mondays, 6 months of Tuesdays, 6 months of Wednesdays, and curate what that volatility pattern is, that is the daily price movement ranges, or the DPMRs. At the end of the day, gang, there's support and resistance, but there's support and resistance in a way that we normally don't see it represented on a chart. These aren't trend lines. These aren't moving averages. What they are is support and resistance based on time and volatility. And based on the fact that we are very close to this zone, we are setting up what could be a buy because the overall structure is up, indicating long is still the path of least resistance. You can see an example back in here, right? When we touch that DPR, traded right into it. So we're looking for something like that, ideally. We can dive a little bit further into something like the XLK and ask ourselves, hey, do we have something similar? I am not ruling out Apple, Microsoft, XLK, but we need to get a little bit lower, which means the NASDAQ could go also a little bit lower, which would serve us, right? Which would serve us. What about the S&P? Take a look at the S&P here, right down into that zone. Now, for those of you that know me, I'm a fan of price patterns. I am not a fan of chart patterns because chart patterns are really subjective. They can be powerful, but they take a lot of time to master. But price patterns, they do not take a lot of time to master. Meaning, we're just using open, high, low, and close to figure out if there's a pattern. I'm going to be looking for what I call a minor low pattern in this area. Price patterns, right? And if we can get that in this area between about 4,000 and 39.65, this could be very, very helpful. But we're not just going to buy the level, although certainly an aggro position could be interesting, but we're going to look for that price pattern as well. All right, so that's the S&P. That's the second symbol on my radar. So NASDAQ, took a quick little dive into the XLK. The S&P. Actually, let's take a quick little deep dive into financials, right? Do we like financials to the long side? I absolutely do. This is going to be more of an oversold, potentially oversold buy. Still an uptrend, but the structure has gone from bullish to a little bit of neutral. Gang, respect the trend that was. Listen to me now, believe me later. The path of least resistance is still up, but the trend is wobbling a bit. Makes sense to be a little bit more conservative. I'm still open to a buy, but this is something that I shared with my folks in the Sector Secrets Mastery Room. How about a high concentration weighted stock within the XLF? That's a mean reversion in Wells, gang. So even as a futures trader, even as a sector trader, we will occasionally find support in individual stocks that's greater than the sector or even the index, okay? All right, the last symbol that I want to share with you, look, gang, it's bonds. Where yields go tell us a lot about risk appetite and risk aversion. And yields have been having a very difficult time getting set up. So you might say, okay, Rag, what are these DPMRs going to help me do? We'll talk a lot more about this, by the way, on Thursday. So if you're already not familiar, maybe you haven't registered already, simplertrading.com/auto, how to automatically, when I say automatically, the levels are automated. The sequence is automated, meaning you know to check the DPMR, you know to check certain indicators, and you wait to put a checkbox. And then now the setup becomes more of a sequence that you're just waiting to see that pattern repeat. So automatically know when to buy, sell, or stay out of any swing trade. We're talking overnight trades, gang. Overnight trades are working again. They really are. Let's get back to this chart here of ZB. All right, it's not enough. We don't want to blindly follow zones, right? And as we head lower, it's tempting to want to short some of these. Those of you that know what grab candles are, you see a bunch of red ones, what do you know? It's a bearish environment. Maybe not a downtrend, but it's a bearish environment. This is now, as of, and I'm going to show you here, as of Friday and today, we're finally getting a signal in a neutral environment that's telling me we could start looking at long bonds again, right? We can start looking at long bonds again. And by the way, this candle here wasn't a failure. It just didn't have the upside follow through that continued day after day after day. We hit the bottom end of the range. We hit the top end of the range. That's a trade, right? But what we're looking for is, can we get a trade that follows through for a handful of days for a short-term swing? Overnight positions, but not needing days upon days upon days or even weeks of follow through. We can get out within a handful of days at an initial target and then see how much higher is high or how much lower is low. These are the three symbols on my radar. We're going to talk a lot more about this setup. We're going to talk a lot more about these tools and the different tools that complement this setup. We're going to talk all about them on Thursday. So register. You'll get the invite link. If you cannot attend live, which I do recommend because I do answer a lot of questions during the webinar. It's live. This is not a recorded event, so we can answer a lot of questions and engage live. And even if you can't, if you register, we get that replay link out to you very quickly. So 7 Central, if you're on the East Coast like me, that's 8 p.m. New York time, okay? All right, gang, looking forward to seeing you then. Keep an eye on ES. Keep an eye on NQ. Keep an eye on ZB, all right? We're going to see if we can, and by the way, maybe in Charts and Coffee tomorrow, I'll talk about the euro. What's the US dollar doing and what does the euro tell us about it? And I can throw these DPMRs on there as well. All right, lots going on, lots to be excited about. I'll see you in the next update. Hey traders, Raghee from Simpler Trading. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like and a comment below. And remember, subscribe and click the bell icon so you'll get notified of the next update. And when you're ready to join me for live trading, be sure to head on over to simplertrading.com. I'll see you in the next update.